option. Yeah, I just saw it this morning when it updated. All right, we are on Daniel chapter 6, verse 19.
We already read the Bible. We just need to read the commentaries through maybe 23-ish. Does that sound right?
Yes, 19 through 23. Yeah.
Okay.
So Darius arose. Oh, also Darius. Some people believe Darius is Cyrus. Darius arose with the first light of dawn and hastened to the lion's den. Oh, they were already in the lion's den.
Yeah,
Already.
I read that.
Even before he got to the pit and ordered the seals broken and the stone removed, he called out to Daniel in an anguished voice. In what he said, he confessed that Daniel's God was the living God, not a dead idol, and that he had the power to deliver his faithful servant. Daniel's faith brought him peace and assurance, but the king's faith was weak and wavering. Is your God able to deliver you? When Darius heard Daniel's voice saying, "O king, live forever," he knew that his friend and faithful officer had been delivered. Hebrews 11:33. Daniel was always quick to give God the glory. God could have closed the lion's mouth by simply saying the word, but he chose to send an angel to do the job. The angel not only controlled the hungry beasts, but also kept Daniel company. Oh, that's
That is nice.
yeah. So he wasn't there alone. Just as the Lord had come to walk with 3 Jewish men whom Nebuchadnezzar had thrown into the fiery furnace. The book of Daniel reveals a great deal about the work of angels in this world, not only their ministries to God's people, but also their influence on nations. You see other examples in 10, verses 10 through 13 and verses 20 through 21. When we think of an angel delivering Daniel, promises like Psalm 34:7 and 91:11 come to mind, and we remember the angel's ministry to Jesus. We don't know when angels are with us, Hebrews 13:2, but we do know that they are present to serve us and sent by God to assist us. When Daniel was removed from the lion's den, he bore no wounds, just as the 3 Jewish men bore no evidence that they had been in the furnace. The Lord delivered Daniel because of his faith and because he was innocent of any crime before the king or any sin before the Lord. This means that the king's law about prayer was rejected in heaven and that Daniel was right in disobeying it. Oh, that's interesting. I like that. The king's law was rejected in heaven. By suggesting such a law, scheming officers disobeyed the true and living God. Exodus 20:1-6. I wonder what that is.
I mean, I'm looking up Hebrews 13:2.
Someone would look up Exodus 20:1-6.
Hebrews 13:2. Don't forget to show hospitality to strangers, for some who have done this have entertained angels without realizing it. I got somebody. What was the other? Exodus.
Did somebody have Exodus?
I got it.
Okay.
Exodus 20. I'm almost there. I went a little too far. 1-6. Then God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the place of slavery. Do not have other gods besides me. Do not make an idol for yourself, whether in the shape of anything in the heavens above or on earth below or in waters under the earth. Do not bow and worship to them and do not serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, bringing the consequences of their fathers' iniquity on the children to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing faithful love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commands.
So by suggesting such a law, the scheming officers disobeyed the true and living God and robbed him of the glory he deserved. God saved Daniel because it brought great glory to his name and because he still had more work to do. God's servants are immortal until their work is done. However, it must be pointed out that not every faithful servant of the Lord is delivered from trial and death. In some miraculous way. Oh, okay. However, it must be pointed out that not every faithful servant of the Lord is delivered from trial and death in some miraculous way. Hebrews 11, 1 through 35 names some great men and women of faith, and describes their achievements. But verses 36 through 40 describe the others who also had great faith and yet were persecuted and martyred. These unnamed others had just as much faith as the people in the first group, but were not granted special deliverance. James, the brother of John, was martyred, but Peter was delivered from prison, and yet both men were apostles and faithful servants of the Lord. It is unwise to draw conclusions from consequences, lest we end up making wrong evaluations, such as Job's friends.
So-called friend.
Yeah, so-called friends. So that took me through 23.
The next morning, nobody was happier over Daniel's survival than King Darius. At the miracle, he clearly realized that Daniel's God was wholly unlike gods of wood and stone. Daniel's God was not to be messed with. Daniel replied to him that God's angel had shut the mouths of lions because he was innocent. Then Daniel reminded the king, "Before you, I have not done harm," essentially saying, "Your Majesty, the only thing I was guilty of was being faithful to my God."
Anything else? Anybody else have? Okay, we need. Assuming no, we need to read 24 through 28.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yes.
What Bible do you use? What you guys use? Because
We-
my wording is, so I wasn't sure.
Mine's a
Or-
Christian Standard Bible.
Mine's the Message. But I also use John MacArthur's.
I have
There's app-
NKJV Spirit Filled Life Bible. I got it from I forgot. Never mind. It was
Well, what did yours say, Linda? Was it different than what Caitlin read?
yes. I mean, it's the same wording, but it's worded differently.
It's the same meaning, but just worded differently.
Jack Hayford. I
Oh,
got
Jack
it.
Hayford.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was wondering, because I sort of like to read the same thing you guys are reading.
We're all in different stuff. We're all in different Bibles, I
Yeah.
think.
I think Janet and I
have-
both have New Living Translation, Janet. Sorry, Kathy.
I have an NIV, but I noticed even other NIVs, the wording is a little different than in mine. So I don't think
Maybe
there's,
revised.
Yeah.
yeah.
Mine's just a little bit, but couple words a little different than Kathy's, and Connie's. Ours is similar, but there's a little bit,
Mhm.
but a few. Sometimes it's difficult to follow.
It's interesting though, having different versions, I think, because like, I think it was it Sunday morning or maybe Wednesday evening, we were in here and, I think it was Wednesday evening and what we were reading seemed so difficult, but then we read it in the Message and it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So like having the different versions does, I think, help to broaden like our understanding of what they're trying to say.
Thank
Linda,
you.
you can also download the Bible app and you can select any. There's a variety of versions on there if you just want to read different ones.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, 24 through 28. Who wants to read?
I can read.
Okay.
Then the king gave orders to arrest the men who had maliciously accused Daniel. He had them thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children.
Mm.
The lions leaped on them and tore them apart before they even hit the floor of the den. Then King Darius sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. So he's running the whole world.
Mm.
Peace and prosperity to you. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian.
See, there we go. Now there's
That's
Cyrus.
two people.
And the following reign of Cyrus is what mine says, the Persian. Well, let's read on and see what they say. Daniel's night of confinement in the lion's den ended in the morning of glory and in a morning of glory and deliverance, when the king himself setting him free. Imagine the excitement in the city as the news spread that Daniel had spent the night in the lion's den and had come out unhurt. God could have prevented Daniel from going into the lion's den, but allowing him to go in and bring him out unhurt, the Lord received greater honor. Eastern monarchs had absolute power over their subjects, and no one dared to question their decisions, let alone try to change them. Darius didn't throw all 122 officers and their families into the den of lions, but only those men and families who had accused Daniel. The righteous is delivered from trouble, but the wicked takes his place. Proverbs 11:8. The only exception to this law occurred when Jesus Christ, the righteous one, took the place of guilty sinners when he died for them on the cross. There is a law of compensation that says whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever rolls a stone will have it roll back on him. For example, Pharaoh ordered the Hebrew male babies destroyed in Egypt, and at Passover, all the Egyptian firstborn died. He commanded the newborn Jewish babies to be drowned in the Nile River, and his own army was drowned in the Red Sea. Haman tried to destroy the Jewish nation and ended up being hanged on the gallows that he had made for Mordecai. Even if sinners aren't judged in this present life, they will be judged after they die, and the judgment will be just. It seems cruel to us that families were destroyed along with the conspirators, but that was an official Persian law. Oh, that's probably good to know. That was an official Persian law, and the conspirators knew it. Oh, so they rolled the dice with their families' lives. That's really nice. Jewish law prohibited punishing the children for the sins of the fathers, but Eastern depots took a different view. They didn't want any remaining member of a traitor's family to conspire to kill the ruler who ordered the father's execution. It was much easier to bury corpses than to keep an eye on potential assassins. And besides, the example put fear into the hearts of potential troublemakers. Another important factor is God's covenant with Abraham. The Lord promised that those who blessed the people of Israel would themselves be blessed, but those who cursed them would be cursed. In allowing the families to be slain, God was only being faithful to his word. Now we're at 25 through 27. But Darius did more than execute the criminals. He also issued a decree to the whole empire, commanding his subjects to show fear and reverence to God, the God of Daniel, and the God of the Hebrew exiles. Darius's first decree in this chapter declared that he was God. But the second decree declared that God of the Hebrews was the true and living God. In doing this, Darius joined King Nebuchadnezzar by giving public testimony to the power and glory of the true and living God. God could have kept Daniel out of the lion's den, but by rescuing him from the lions, God received greater glory. The Jews had been humiliated by the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple because their defeat made it look as though the false gods of Babylonians were stronger than the true God of Israel. The idolatry of the Jewish people, especially their kings and priests, had brought about the ruin of Judah, and the Lord used an idolatrous nation to defeat them. Jehovah hadn't been honored by his own people, but now he was receiving praise from pagan rulers whose decrees would be published throughout the Gentile world. These decrees were a witness to the Gentiles that there was but one true God, the God of the Jews, but the decrees were also a reminder to the Jews that Jehovah was the true and living God. The Jewish exiles were surrounded by idols and were constantly tempted to worship the gods of the conquerors. What a paradox. The Jews that the Jews, who were supposed to be witnesses to the Gentiles of the true and living God, were being witnessed to by the Gentiles. The theology expressed in the decree of Darius is as true as anything written by Moses, David, or Paul. Jehovah is the living and eternal God whose kingdom will never be destroyed. He is the God who saves people and rescues them from death, danger, and death, and who performs signs and wonders. Verse 28, since Darius the Mede is a shadowy figure in ancient history, we aren't sure how long he ruled Babylon and exactly when Cyrus took over the throne personally. It's been suggested that since Darius was 62 years old when he took Babylon in chapter 5, verse 31, he may have died within a few years and then Cyrus ascended the throne. Regardless of what transpired, Daniel was respected by Darius and Cyrus and continued to be a witness for the Lord. He lived to see Cyrus issue the edict that permitted the Jews to return to their land and rebuild their temple. He gives 2 Chronicles 36, 22 and 23, and Ezra 1. Those talk about them going back. And may have been used of God to help bring about this fulfillment of Jeremiah's prophecy, which is also in Jeremiah 25, 11 through 12. Certainly his prayers for his people played an important role in the positive attitude Cyrus had toward the Jewish people. Along with the account of the deliverance of the 3 men from the fiery furnace, the report of Daniel's deliverance from the lion's den must have brought great encouragement to the Jews in exile. They knew about Jeremiah's prophecy and wondered if their God would really deliver them. But if he could deliver 3 men from the furnace and Daniel from the lions, surely he could deliver the exiles from Babylon and take them back to their own land. But Daniel has a message for God's people today who are being attacked by the enemy and suffering because of their righteous stand for the Lord. Whether we face a fiery furnace or the roaring lion, we are in the Lord's care and he will work it out. His divine purpose for his glory, casting all your care upon him because he cares for you.
Tony is short-winded. Shall I go ahead or wait? Are you discussing?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Darius was deeply relieved to have Daniel out of the den, and he vented his displeasure against those men who had maliciously accused Daniel. His gruesome judgment was typical of the vengeance taken by kings in ancient world. Darius's decree honoring the true God is a theological gem that sounds like it could have been written by one of the psalmists. Once again, as Nebuchadnezzar had, this Gentile ruler gave glory to the living God who rescues and delivers, and whose kingdom will never be destroyed. The Jewish people may have been in exile, but God had not abandoned them. Moreover, he was determined to receive praise from their captors. Thus Daniel continued to prosper under Gentile rulers. A reminder to the Jewish readers of this book to be faithful to God while Israel was under Gentile domination.
Any thoughts, notes?
I'm relating it all to what's happening right now in Israel. Yes, there's always hope.
There's always going to be a remnant that's protected.
So the way that the families were punished, the conspirators and the families were punished, had Jesus been here already and there was that plan of salvation where we could repent of our sins, then that no longer necessarily, they could be judged here, like according to courts and whatever, and go for the death penalty. But it's according to God, if they have repented, that isn't going to be a deal breaker for going to heaven, right?
Yeah, if their heart was true.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
if you look at David, even David, he committed murder, but he truly repented and was sorry, and that was even before Jesus. But this here was that Persian law too. That
Right.
said that everybody went down, your entire
Right.
family. So that's sitting there thinking, if you and your husband have 5 children, say back then, and your husband goes and does something knowing that he's putting you and the children's life on the line, you would think you'd weigh that out.
What a man.
Yeah.
Well, and I understand the fact that they said where they were saying about how, okay, if you would let the family live and the sons grew up and they're revengeful, you know, what's to stop them from saying, well, you killed my dad, so therefore we're going to take over. You know, I get that part, you know, that would be why you would want to do that.
Yeah, well, even with King David, his own son Absalom turned on him and tried to take the throne from his own dad. You know, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
but that's probably why Galisar murdered evil up there to clean out the entire. Well, and that's when David took over for King Saul. David did not kill Jonathan's son, but Jonathan's son sat at the table with David. You know, but he could have, because that would have been normal
Legally.
legally. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? Now we're going to chapter 7. Remember, we talked yesterday, chapter 7 and 8 actually fits in between 4 and 5.
Let me tell you what this one says about it.
Okay.
Unless someone read it yesterday, I don't know. Chronologically, this chapter takes place before chapter 5. At this time, Belshazzar, that it,
Mhm.
had just been given a position of authority, 553 BC,
Yes.
and Daniel was probably in his late 60s. The first 6 chapters of Daniel present history. The last 6 chapters are visions relating mainly
So
to the
he
future.
is he saying that Daniel's looking back in his 60s talking about this? Or because Daniel wouldn't have been in his 60s in Belshazzar's first year. He was a teenager, right?
No, that's not what this is.
So well, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe he's saying that he's looking back.
Oh, in chapter 7?
Yeah.
Very possibly, yeah. Yes. It's,
Anybody else have notes on that? Is it Daniel looking back?
the first 6 chapters of Daniel present history. And the last 6 are visions of the future.
Okay, mine says Daniel was nearly 70 years old at the time that these events occurred. Perhaps Daniel arranged the material in his book this way so that the records of his interpretations of the dreams and visions of others came before the visions the Lord gave to him. That doesn't make sense though, because when in the first year of the reign of King Belshazzar, not Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
Okay, that would make sense. That would make sense. So Daniel would have been around 60.
My Bible says that he had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts.
Yeah, in my head, I was thinking it was Nebuchadnezzar, but that would make sense, Belshazzar. All right, so my reading can be broken down just about anyway. How does Tony break it down? Actually, he has it
What?
overlapping with, what were you gonna say, Caitlin?
Tony is basically every verse to 2 verses. So 1 to 3, 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 14.
Okay. I have, Worsby has this one really weird. Have you figured out why he does this? I think you said something the other day. Because he overlaps some of these.
It
Bless
said in the
you.
notes the last
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I forget what it was. Because he has 7, 1 through 7, and 15 through 23 together with his notes. And then he goes to verse 4, 5, 6, 7. But then when you go to the next page, he overlaps them again.
He might tell us.
Okay, well, we'll start reading here and see. Do we want to go maybe through? Yeah. Maybe through 9-ish. Mine's so weird, I don't know. Where does yours have a good stop, Caitlin, for Tony? Because mine just overlaps, so it's hard.
8.
Okay,
Yeah, that'd be good, please.
My
right, let's
Bible
do-
has, my Bible has 1 through 14, and it's labeled Daniel's dream of 4 beasts. And then at 15, it starts the interpretation of the dream, if that makes any
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm.
I
Mine
think we're
1
gonna,
through 8. 1 through 8's together in mine, and then 9 to 14 is together.
okay, let's just do one, let's get started on 1 through 8, because I think that will probably get us to 10:30 anyway. Because there's a lot of notes
Oh my
there.
word, it's 10:05.
Yeah. Who wants to read through 8?
I can.
Thank you.
In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind as he was lying on his bed. He wrote down the substance of his dream. Daniel said, "In my vision at night I looked, and there before me were the 4 winds of heaven, churning up the great sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion, and it had wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground, so that it stood on 2 feet like a man, and the heart of a man was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, 'Get up and eat your fill of flesh.' After that, I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads and was given authority to rule. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth that spoke boastfully.
Okay, so, but didn't Belshazzar have that party his first year also? But on here we have him reigning 3 years. So Daniel had a dream in 553. The first year of Belshazzar's reign.
Oh, well, this is making me think that the 4 beasts.
It
represent
is the fourth, that is it.
That,
It is.
yeah.
All right. King Nabonidus was monarch over the empire, but he made his son Belshazzar, ruler over Babylon. Oh, so Nablus was over the entire empire. Belshazzar was just Babylon.
Yeah, remember we talked about that, him going out and taking care of business. all
Yeah,
over
but
the
I
place?
thought it was just in Babylon.
Mm.
Okay, so he had rule over the entire empire. He, Belshazzar, only had rule over just Babylon. You can put it all there instead of writing it in my Bible, just in case I'm screwing it up. The first year of his reign was probably 553. This means that the events described in chapters 7 and 8 preceded those described in 5 and 6. And Daniel was nearly 70 years old at the time. Why did I write 60?
I had read 60. in
Oh,
here.
okay. Daniel was probably about 70 years old at the time these events occurred. Perhaps Daniel had arranged the material in his book this way so that the records of his interpretations of the dreams and visions of others came before the visions the Lord gave to him. Except for Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the great image explained in chapter 2, the other visions in Daniel 2 through 6 don't have a wide sweep of application as do the visions granted to Daniel. Whatever that means. The other visions in Daniel 2 through 6 do not have the wide sweep of application, as do the visions granted to Daniel. The vision explained in this chapter parallels the vision God gave to Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2. In this vision, Daniel learned about 6 different kingdoms. 4 of them, kingdoms of this world, one of them, the kingdom of Satan, and the last one, the kingdom of the Messiah. Okay, that's why I thought there was one more for Rome in my original study. That's probably why. So now he's saying this dream to Daniel is more encompassing than the other ones that we've heard so far.
Well, this says Nebuchadnezzar's dream covered the political aspects of the empires, but Daniel's dream depicted the moral characteristics.
Hmm.
Go on.
Okay. Okay, so God communicated with Daniel while he was asleep by giving him disturbing visions in a dream. During this vision, Daniel was also a part of the event because he was able to approach an angel and ask for an interpretation. Daniel doesn't explain how he could be asleep in his bed and yet able to speak to an angel standing before the throne of God. Perhaps like Paul, he didn't know if he was in the body or out of the body. The restless sea is a frequent biblical image for the nations of the world. So the sea is nations and people. Just as the ocean is sometimes stormy, so the nations of the world are sometimes in confusion or even at war. And just as the waves and the currents of the ocean are unpredictable, so the course of world history is beyond man's ability to chart or to predict. Historians like Oswald Spengler and Arnold Toynbee have attempted to find a pattern to world history, but to no avail. From the human point of view, the nations seem to work out their own destinies, but the invisible winds of God blows over the surface of the water to accomplish his will in time. If there's one message that is emphasized in the book of Daniel, it is the Most High rules the kingdom of men. Daniel 4:2. The angel told Daniel that the 4 beasts represented 4 kingdoms, the same sequence of empires that Nebuchadnezzar had seen in his dream in chapter 2. However, the king saw a great and impressive image made of valuable metals, while Daniel saw dangerous beasts. that ruthlessly devoured peoples and nations. I think that's a good comparison. Nebuchadnezzar, in his dream, saw the empires. Okay, however, the king saw a great and impressive image made of valuable metals, while Daniel saw dangerous beasts. To human eyes, the nations of the world are like Nebuchadnezzar's great image, impressive and important. But from God's point of view, the nations are only ferocious beasts that attack and seek to devour one another. The lion with the wings of an eagle that represented the empire of Babylon, which is in Nebuchadnezzar's image a head of gold. In scripture, Babylon is identified with both the lion and the eagle. So in Babylon, so it can have an eagle identification too. I'm going to have to move down here to make notes. I think so. The United States is the eagle. The description of the lion being lifted up to stand like a man and then given a man's heart reminds us of how God humbled King Nebuchadnezzar and made him live like a beast for 7 years. God told Daniel that the Babylonian Empire would fall. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Now, verse 5, the bear with the 3 ribs in its mouth symbolized the empire of the Medes and the Persians who defeated Babylon. Daniel 5, and it parallels the arms and the chest of silver in the great image. The bear was raised up on one side because the Persians were stronger than the Medes. In the later vision of the ram with the 2 horns in Daniel 8, the higher horn represented the Persians. I feel a lot of note taking coming. Interpreters aren't agreed on the meaning of the 3 ribs that the bear carried in its mouth. The best explanation that they stand for is Lydia, Egypt, and Babylon. The best explanation is that they stand for Lydia, Egypt, and Babylon, nations that the Medes and Persians had conquered. The armies of the Medo-Persian Empire did indeed devour much flesh as they marched across the battlefields. The leopard with the 4 wings represented Alexander the Great. So this is leopard. With 4 wings are his kids. Alexander the Great and the swift conquest of his army, resulting in the incredible expansion of the kingdom of Greece. This beast is identified with the number 4, 4 heads, 4 horns. Alexander's untimely death in 323 left him without a successor. And his kingdom was divided into 4 parts and assigned to his leaders. Palestine and Egypt went to Ptolemy I. Syria, which is interesting because of all the issues we're having now. Syria was ruled by Seleucus I. Thrace and Asia Minor were assigned to Lysimachus, and Macedon and Greece were governed by Antipater and Cassander. Blah, blah. The dreadful and terrible beast in verse 7 represented the Roman Empire, as strong and enduring as iron and as uncompromising as a beast on the rampage. The Roman army swept across the ancient world, defeated one nation after another until the empire extended from the Atlantic Ocean east to the Caspian Sea, from North Africa north to the Rhine and Danube rivers. Egypt, Palestine, and Syria were all under Roman domination. This beast corresponds with the legs of iron on Nebuchadnezzar's image. But the 10 toes, we didn't hear about the 10 toes with Nebuchadnezzar, did we?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so we have 10 toes. We're represented by 10 horns. Often in scripture, a horn is a symbol of a ruler or of royal authority. Later in the study, we'll have more to say about the little horn of Daniel 7:8. So now we got these 10 toes.
You don't think that relates to the 10 horns?
Yeah, it will. 10 kings. But I didn't realize that only Daniel in verses 40, 43, and 44, or AKA 10 horns. Oops, not horns. And this was only in Daniel's dream.
Well, we didn't read it. Are we gonna read it later?
No, this is erasable. That's why I'm doing it here. I'll put it in my notes.
Lori, I think it comes later.
Thank you.
In the
You're
great
welcome.
movement history, one empire has replaced another, leading up to the establishing of the Roman Empire. The two visions, chapters 2 and 7, make it clear that God knows the future, controls the rise and fall of nations and rulers. Daniel was living in the Babylonian Empire, but he knew that Babylon would be taken by the Medes and the Persians, and that Greece would conquer the Medo-Persian Empire, and Rome would eventually conquer all. Prophecy is history written beforehand. The 4 kingdoms represented by the 4 beasts have already come and gone. Okay, so when he says 4 beasts, he's saying the Roman Empire is just called the beast. Well, it was in Revelation, it was. So yes, that would be true. Now, in Revelation, the Babylonian Empire became.
It was different from any of the other beasts and had 10 horns. That's the 4th one. Do you
Okay.
think that is?
Well,
Right.
number wise, I thought the beast, but then we also have the beast in Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
My footnote here in my Bible says the 4th beast points to both Rome and the end times. Many Bible
Okay.
scholars believe that the horns correspond to 10 kings who will reign shortly before God sets up his everlasting kingdom. These 10 kings had still not come to power at the time of John's vision recorded in the book of Revelation. The little horn is a future human ruler or the Antichrist. God is illustrating the final end of all worldly kingdoms in contrast to his eternal kingdom.
Okay, so the 4 kingdoms represented by the 4 beasts have already come and gone. However, verse 12 indicates that each kingdom continues to exist in some way within succeeding kingdom that devoured it. But Daniel saw in his vision something that wasn't revealed to Nebuchadnezzar. The last human kingdom on earth would be a frightful kingdom, unlike any of the previous kingdoms, and it would declare war on God. This is the kingdom of the Antichrist described in Revelation 13 through 9. So there's this kingdom in here, what they call the Antichrist kingdom. Somebody called it, Caitlin, Antichrist kingdom.
Yes.
An evil kingdom that will be destroyed when Jesus returns to earth. The judgment was depicted in Nebuchadnezzar's vision as the stone cut without hands that tumbled down the mountain and destroyed the image. Okay, then my 7 and 8. This represents 10 kings or kingdoms that will exist in the last days. Daniel wrote in language the people of his day could understand, and the concept of nations as we have them today would be foreign to the ancients. In Daniel's day, countries were ruled by kings, but the kingdoms spoken of here will be nations as we know them. Some students of prophecy think that the 10 nation of the United States of Europe will emerge in the last days. Well, we do have the European Union. Will emerge in the last days, and recent developments in Europe, the organization of the European Union, there we go, and the use of the Eurodollar seem to point in that direction. However, there are more than 10 nations in the European Union. I wonder how many are there now, because some have dropped out. There used to be, I think, 13. So we had better not draw hasty conclusion. It is out of this confederation of 10 nations,
For the
which
European Union.
way is an extension of the Roman Empire, and the Antichrist will come, and the final world kingdom will be organized and actively oppose. What was that?
Kathy's looking up to see how many people are in
Sorry,
the
I thought I
European
had
Union.
it, I thought I had it muted. Sorry. There is, I'll get off of there. Get off. There is France, Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, Luxembourg, Bulgaria, Czech Republic and Romania, Latvia, Finland, Hungary, Germany, Greece, Lithuania, Spain, Malta, Sweden, Slovenia, Austria, Croatia, Denmark, Cyprus, Estonia, and Poland. There's 20 something.
More than 20, yeah.
Counting 24.
Where am I reading to? 9?
8.
8.
Well, it is supposed to be 9, but 9 is the whole way over on the next page.
Yeah, I know, that's what I was just looking at, so I will stop at 8.
Okay.
If they're overlapping, I don't.
My suspicion is those verses, like for the little horn, verse 8, 11, 24 to 26, all talk about the little horn.
Yeah. Okay, well, go ahead, because it's a 10:25, so let's go through just, I guess, 7 to.
I'll read
Yeah,
totally
like-
through 8.
Yeah, I think so.
It's important to note that the events in Daniel are not always presented in chronological order. This particular vision is said to have occurred in the first year of King Belshazzar, who was dethroned at the end of chapter 5. Later on in chapter 9, we will return to the time period of Darius. In the first half of the book, Daniel interpreted the visions of others. In the second half, Daniel's own visions needed interpreted. Years after addressing King Nebuchadnezzar's dream concerning the 4 great world powers, Daniel had a vision related to the same 4 kingdoms. It's fascinating to see the difference in perspective between the dream of a pagan king and the vision given to God's servant. While the sequence of the kingdoms and their eventual destruction are the same, there's an extraordinary difference in the way they are presented. In Nebuchadnezzar's dream, these powers were represented by a glorious, awe-inspiring statue. But in Daniel's dream, these Gentile kingdoms were huge beasts coming up from the sea, bent on dominion. Thank you. The first beast represents Babylon, portrayed as a lion with eagle's wings, but the wings were torn off this beast, which is perhaps a reference to God reducing Nebuchadnezzar to madness until he learned to humbly give God glory. The second beast represents the Medo-Persian Empire, pictured as a bear that was told to gorge itself on flesh. Why was the bear raised up on one side? Probably because the Persians defeated the Medes and absorbed them into the empire. Combined, their forces were able to defeat Babylon. The 3 ribs in the bear's mouth symbolize the 3 great enemies that Persia defeated in its conquest: Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon. All of them were gobbled up by the Medo-Persian Empire, which ruled for some 200 years. The Greek Empire, established by Alexander the Great, is represented by the third beast, a leopard. Leopards are incredibly fast, but this one had 4 wings, thus indicating it could move with lightning speed. The Greeks under Alexander defeated the Medo-Persians in a matter of a few months in 334 BC, and Alexander had conquered the world by the time he was 30 years old. The four heads that Daniel saw referred to the four kingdoms in which Alexander's dominion was split after his death. The fourth beast of Daniel's vision corresponds to the Roman Empire. God gave Daniel a much more complete picture of it than received in Nebuchadnezzar's day, because we find that the Roman Empire will appear in history again, except in a different form, during the Great Tribulation. This beast was frightening and dreadful, and out of it came 10 horns. That is, 10 kings or kingdoms. Daniel noticed that a little horn appeared among them, obviously of great importance. The key to identifying this figure is that it has the eyes of a human and a mouth that is speaking arrogantly. This figure is the Antichrist, called the Beast in Revelation 13:1. He is the final world ruler whose reign of terror during the tribulation will bring to completion the time of the Gentiles, when Israel is trodden down by the nations.
I feel like each one of those needs their own, like, more space, because like, I think this makes sense then that the lion with the eagle's wings and the wings were tore off when King Nebuchadnezzar was humbled.
Mhm.
And then the leopard, because Alexander the Great did conquer the world by the time he was 30, so that he was fast. And then the four wings being his four leaders that took over.
Amazing.
Which we'll learn more about. I hate that their dates don't always line up with each other. Commentaries. Anything else? 10:30 on the dot.
That was good
Nope.
timing.
Yes, it was. All right, this concludes the reading of God's word for today. We will pick back up tomorrow on verse 8, 9.
Janet, I hope you feel okay.
Yeah, Janet, me too.
Thank you. See you tomorrow,
Janet-
hopefully.
Janet, I'm glad to see you on here, online and participating.
Well, thank you.